Social media for the last 15 years has been more like email and email marketing, meaning get as many people to sign up for your email, send it out, and a percentage of them opens it and engages it. So I grew up in email marketing for Wine Library. And so when social came and I built Gary Vee, I understood it. I'm like, let me get as many followers as I can on the merit of my content. And then a percentage of those people will see my content every time. About 3-4 years ago, what you saw was TikTok gaining real steam. And what you understood was it was interest graph. The algorithm took the content. So for everybody who's listening, the fact that I've spent 15 years doing good work and amassed this huge following, quote unquote, gives me almost that's a little bit extreme, but I don't have as big of advantage of getting my content out today as I did 4 years ago, because now if you make a good piece of content and you've never posted before, it could get 500,000 views, and I could put out a piece of content that only gets 40,000 views, and so the algorithms are taking over the feed based on people's interests more so than based on who they follow. So I would argue that we are in social media is no longer about the human part, the social graph. It's now around the interest graph, which is actually much more similar to how people consume information. People are very linear. They don't realize how big pop culture is and how they can factor into their boring business. I had a gentleman reach out to me who has literally, I used a concrete cement business in one of my analogies in a piece of content. He literally owned a asphalt business. He literally started to make TikToks, even though he thought it was the wildest, craziest thing he'd ever heard. And it literally has doubled his business. An asphalt seller, like guy that comes and redoes your driveway, made a couple TikToks. One went decent, another one went viral. And literally, if I recall properly the email, a business that was doing $800,000 a year, servicing a local area, I think he was in Wisconsin, is now doing 2.5 million. The tears were coming through the email. What people don't realize is that little clever video on Instagram that only got 90 views. One of those 90 views is someone who's actually considering to hire an attorney, and they actually like the fact that you were a little silly and not buttoned up, and you made them feel more comfortable to reach out to you to work with your law firm. But most people who are listening to this podcast who are in a B2B or like a different kind of business are not thinking how TikTok can work for them. Platforms and culture. If you take anything out of this interview and you want to crush social, obsess with platforms and culture. Platforms what are the platforms currently doing that they give a shit about? So when Facebook announces carousels, good news, they need to test it. That means you should be making carousels because more people are going to see it organically, right? If the trends of the consumers on the platforms are people like skits, that's a platform and culture thing, because you got to always know what's going on in culture. Culture is pop culture. Mm-hmm. Do you know pop culture or don't you? Because if you do know pop culture, you're able to create crazy relevance, right? Do you because you're able to integrate that into your copy or the creative itself. There's a few moments, there's 3 weeks to 7 weeks there where the corn kid is a social media obsession, or that the Walgreens private label nice mango gummies are hot with Gen Alpha for a week. But if you're in the gummy business, you should know that. Or you sell candy, you should, do you have a pulse of popular culture on everything? Because what's pop culture to maybe us is definitely not pop culture to somebody that lives in Peru. We are living in the greatest era of marketing and business ever. The opportunities are bigger than ever. More of us can get more of a piece of the pie than ever. We have the biggest platforms in the world of attention costing free. This is insane. Not only that, if you have to do a regular job while you chase your dream, when I was growing up, there was no internet. And so you worked your job 9 to 7, and when you went home, you couldn't build your dream. Every person here can work their 9 to 5 and then build their dream on the internet at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We are walking around Earth, everybody, Brazil, the US, Europe, we are walking around and spending all of our time talking about what's not working, complaining about what's not working, deciding who's in control and we're not. And yet, all of us here, as we sit here today, are living in the best that the world has ever been. Health-wise, money-wise, opportunity-wise, the best. You don't believe that because you read and consume content on social media and mainstream media that tells you it's not. But take a step back and pay very close attention. I promise you, you have way more opportunity than your grandmother and grandfather had. Promise. You need to post 30 times a day on social media, but you have to be good at it. So what you need to do is what I just said about AI. You need to start Googling and YouTubing and podcasting and educate yourself on something I call SOC, strategic organic content. Not just posting happy fucking Wednesday and hoping it works. I need you to understand the thumbnail, the first 3 seconds, what time you post, how many words, which platform, what's going on LinkedIn carousels that's different than Facebook carousels, Facebook Reels, what are broadcast channels. This is now the television. And until you understand that, you are leaving money on the table. Back to scaring them, this is how it works, brother. Right now, everyone, most likely, is just leaving double growth on the table. And then it becomes the thing that puts them out of business. Thank you so much. Have a lot of thoughts on this, as you can imagine. Obviously, I've had the luxury of having you pay attention for a long time on this journey. Current state, more rigor around thumbnails, copy, first 3 seconds, the hook, the science around the art is huge, and more commitment to short and long form collaboration, meaning doing long form video, films, podcasts, things of that nature, but also doing cut downs for short form and vice versa. The pyramid content thing that I put out years ago. I think that it's the trends that I think are interesting are pushing the boundaries of the creative, meaning, Dustin, you know this, that whole model on TikTok on the Stitch where it's like a viral video and then you act in it, right? Like somebody tumbling down a hill and then you tumble in and be like, and now what you should do is buy day trading attention. That's a creative tactic, green screens. If I could get everyone here to understand, it's not as easy as it used to be. I used to be able to yell and be like, be on TikTok. And if you just did it, you won. Now, and back to why I'm like so focused right now, is we're in 301 course land, not 101 course land. And so it's creative strategy, brother. Like, I don't want to call it testing, but being dramatically more curious and creative. Different formats, written, audio, voiceover, humor, seriousness. How much can everyone be a Renaissance man and women? How can you be a variety show? You just gotta do a lot more and a lot of different stuff on every platform. So LinkedIn versus YouTube Shorts versus TikTok, like it's complicated now, and the rising competition is gonna get worse, and you have AI content coming, and you have just so much coming, and so it's not gonna get less competitive, it's gonna get more competitive, because what I was yelling about when I wrote Crush It, can you show it? When I wrote that book in 2009, was this is underpriced attention, let's go. And I've been doing it for the last 15 years, but now we've hit an inflection point where like people figured it out. And, really it comes down to the creative now. And the algorithms create the organic reach. So it's a whole different world, and it requires much more creativity and much more curiosity and much more humility. Those are the macro. And then tactically, it's, you really got to understand how these things work and which platforms do what and what's happening in pop culture and how do you tie that into your business? Like, how does Taylor Swift's tour a year ago when it's on fire, how does that factor into your business, and can you speak to it or factor it in? So what's going on in pop culture and what's going on platforms? I call it PAC, platforms and culture. And who are you trying to target? Too many of you are trying to get to everyone. Like, if you're targeting 21 to 27-year-old male carpenters, go more narrow when you make your content there. But that also means you could be selling to 42 to 49-year-old moms in Seattle that drink high-end coffee and yoga. You can imagine those two groups need different content. But if you're selling coffee or a book, you want both of them to buy. Get it?
For you today, what would be the top 3 platforms to be on? Because there are so many. And what would you do on each of them? If you were starting now, what would you do on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook?
Yeah, so I think, again, back to the earlier point of self-awareness, if you're selling B2B, all of a sudden LinkedIn is number one, right? If you started a SaaS business, if you're listening right now and you want to, or you sell to lawyers, you have a service that sells to lawyers. then LinkedIn's going to be number one globally for sure, with YouTube Shorts probably being number two because YouTube is a search engine.
Yes.
And a lot of people search there, so that would also be good if you were into SaaS. And then probably in that scenario, I would then say if you're selling, a B2B service, after those two, probably Facebook, grounded in a Facebook group, with then Twitter X being probably fourth. If you're selling SaaS, Instagram's probably a distant fifth.
Right.
Snapchat, Pinterest, they're super far away in that scenario. If you're selling t-shirts to 15 to 25-year-olds, all of a sudden TikTok becomes number one, Instagram probably becomes number two in that scenario, and YouTube Shorts is number three.
Right.
So I think for a lot of people, that's that reality. For broader markets, I think that if you're really trying to sell something, like to the broad consumer, call it for everybody who's 25 to 55, well, now you start getting into Facebook still being an incredibly powerful platform for selling. I do think that organic TikTok for branding is exciting. Instagram, again, becomes a stronger selling platform, but both of those scenarios require ads more than organic reach.
Yeah.
Whereas TikTok, you can win on organic reach and kind of capture lightning in a bottle. So, I hope everybody appreciates the answer.